Gosh, this text is bleeding. You may imagine that at that point when I wrote this essay, I didn't really have a good English. And my instructor corrected quite a lot of stuff in here. It's true because this was my first ever essay written in English. And it wasn't really a normal essay, as you may imagine, the essay that has a topic and that should answer a certain question. But it was an essay written on a more or less free topic in a particular field that has a particular aim to describe the state of research, indicate a lacuna, construct a hypothesis, and provide some evidence for this hypothesis. And also, if it happens, to try to find a counter-argument and then kind of overrule also a counter-argument as well. If overrule is a good word here, I don't know. All right. Anyway, let's have a look on a lot of these crappy small things that happened in this essay. Let's roast them. First thing that I would like to mention is the fact that I wrote this essay. It seems that I wrote this essay for myself, because I knew the research, I knew the material, I kind of wrote the stuff as if my readers also knew the same stuff. But it's certainly not the case. My instructor wasn't that familiar with these works that I mentioned in this, basically what I provided as in evidence for my essay. And it doesn't look like that non-specialists could understand the thing that I've written here. Moreover, I simply omitted some information. Why? I don't know, just unconsciously omitted things that seemed to me very obvious. This way, I simply forgot that I should describe something more than usual in order to make my text more understandable. And this is why some crap happened. And an example of it I'll give you now. The paragraph starts: the only significant point of Danot's argument is the reference to the quite obscure place in another treatise of Theodore. Theodore is latent Koffer. The dispute against the Macedonians, where possibly Theodore mentioned his tenth catechetical homily. If it is read properly, Danot argues, Theodore says here that his catechetical homilies, including the 10th one dedicated to the Holy Spirit, were pronounced before the treatise against the Macedonians. So you know that if the source mentioned another source, this means that the previous source certainly was made, was created, written before the second source. So it's not a big deal to construct this type of logic, but the problem begins in the next sentence. However, Danot did not consider that Theodore composed his work many years after the real dispute had taken place. And here I stop because this real dispute just something that shouldn't be here. I mean, it just appeared here out of the blue, and it seems that it certainly doesn't make sense what kind of real dispute I refer to. But in fact, here I mean the real historical event of the dispute between this Theodore and the Macedonians, a group heretics, that happened in a particular year, the year of where this Theodore became a bishop. But it was a real thing, this real event I refer to here. And moreover, this event was basically the origin of the treatise, the dispute against the Macedonians. So basically, some years after the real historical event, Theodore decided why not to write a memoir. And he just wrote down what he could remember from this dispute. This is the thing that I wanted to say here, but I didn't mention the fact that the treatise against the Macedonians actually originated from the real historical event. And this kind of omitted information makes the entire text here quite obscure, I would say. There is another stuff, another crappy thing that I would like to mention about my essay. Lovely way of referring to my essay. Actually, the thing that is quite opposite to the one that I mentioned right now, it's then the information is just a lot. Then I'm just drawing in the details and not really figuring out what was the like. I didn't articulate. I figured out it for myself, but I didn't articulate what is the major point I'm arguing for. And it happens in this paragraph. In the third catechesis of St. John Chrysostom, we find the passage where Chrysostom briefly mentions the incarnation of Christ and then adds, "Let us leave the words about faith to the teacher." We have already said about the existence of many teachers of catechism in Antioch, and here we see now evidence of it. The question is, whom could St. John, being a teacher himself, call the teacher? Certainly was not Fyodor, in spite of the fact that his 10 homilies on the creed preserved. Fyodor was John's fellow priest and possibly even younger than he. According to Piedanel in Dutrelot, John's phrase about the teacher might mean that it was the Bishop Flavian who explained the creed to the catechumens of Antioch in 388, at the time then Chrysostom was a priest, and who could be also called the teacher of John himself. However, neither Chrysostom nor Fyodor was a bishop of their hometown Antioch. Therefore, we may conclude that Fyodor Mopsuestius' catechetical homilies were uttered not in the time of his priesthood in Antioch, but later in the town of Mopsuestia. Are you alive? Are you with me? Okay, so the point is that there are a lot of historical information here, but it doesn't really make sense. If you read it through, even if you more or less know that historical context, it's not clear what I'm talking about here. I simply didn't put in the first topical sentence one clear thing, the fact that in Antioch, so there is an evidence that in Antioch, in that city, in the end of the 4th century, was a custom that a leader of the community, a bishop, preaches on the creed or on the major statement of the faith, of the Christian faith. So just like that. And then it comes to the details where it mentioned how can we deduce that there was a custom there in that city, just because a person who worked there as a priest basically mentioned that he couldn't speak on faith, but he left the opportunity to speak about the Christian faith or to the leader of the community. So that's as simple as this. And this means also that another person who was also a priest in that city couldn't deliver his homilies on that particular statement of faith in that city. Simple as that. But okay. So let's go further then. There are also some crappy stuff that relates to vocab. I use sometimes a very strange words because that just happens. I don't know. For instance, I just don't know words, and like I didn't know though. Now I know. I didn't know some words in English, and this is why I decided to describe those words. And I wrote the place and the date, where and when. Kinda clumsy. And towards the provenance looks kind of better. But okay, there is another stuff. The words that doesn't really belong to the text that where they put in. For instance, the word claim. As you may imagine, the word claim actually has a negative connotation. So it means that someone says something that doesn't have any ground. For instance, a politician claims blah, blah, blah. So they usually do it, right? But scholars usually, they also claim sometimes some stuff, but at this point where I mentioned the word claim, these scholars actually provide some evidence for their argument. So these scholars claim that the homilies were delivered and so on, but their argument consists of the following. So I even give some evidence from their own argument that they gave. And this means that they didn't claim, they argue. They argued. This is the right word here. And our stuff was quite, that's a common thing for a person who was not an English speaker or even wasn't really acquainted to the customs of international academic writing, and who actually wrote basically as if translating from their own language. Like in my culture, in my academic culture, in my country, the formal language is quite common. So we usually refer to the author, to ourselves, to myself as ourselves, and like in the first person plural. For instance, I wrote, in our opinion, as we have shown, we cannot date. So I refer to myself in the first person plural as I used to do in my own culture. This is not the case for the English speaking academic culture. We usually just write I, in my opinion, as I have shown, and so on. So this means there's just crappy translations, I would say. Other stuff. Sometimes I just forgot to put a simple footnote. And it's not a case of plagiarism. Plagiarism is something different. Then I just forgot to put it because I referred to the source. For instance, John doesn't mention the post-baptismal anointment of the forehead of a newly baptized person, while Theodore does it. So if he does it, why not to really mention it in the footnote, right? But the case of plagiarism, I didn't really have anything here to you to enjoy, but the point is that plagiarism arises then you basically you cite someone or you paraphrase someone else's work, especially like scholarly work, and you didn't mention this person in the footnote. Or, yeah, first of all, in the footnote. This is plagiarism. This is something that indicates that you, as if you kind of stealing the information, the thoughts of some other scholars. So that's not a good practice. So you may imagine. Sorry. All right. This stuff that also some minor crop. Minor crop, I would say, is the fact that I mentioned the publishing house in the main text of my essay. Why I actually mentioned, I can't really understand, because it doesn't relate to the essay, to the argument. Just I mentioned the source, and then published in the source chrétien by some people. You don't need to do it. You mention the publishing house in the footnote, and that's enough. That's strange. Okay. And then final stuff that I would like to mention is basically the weak arguments. Like your final evidence that you provide in your argumentation in your essay should be really strong. It should be solid. As I mentioned before, I basically, at the end of the essay, I had to kind of figure out what kind of counter argument could be for my major argumentation. And I found the counter argument, but I couldn't really argue against it. And I just said, oh, this is wrong because I said it before. That was right. So if you found a counter argument, try to overrule it in a way, I don't know if it's the right word or not, but anyway, try to overrule it with a stronger argument, even maybe stronger than your major one. Okay? Right. So, but the good point of all of this is that this essay actually got 17.5 out of 20. So it's not a bad essay as such. Even like this good essay may have such a crappy stuff inside. So I think it should really console you a little bit on your journey. And anyway, thank you for watching and bye.